Hi, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third webinar organized by TransArtists for i-Portunus and the possibilities for which you can apply. The focus of this webinar today is architecture, so the current open call. And I'm really happy to introduce our guests for today, which are Alan Quireyns, project coordinator from i-Portunus from Goethe-Institut Brussels. He will do a presentation about the current call for architecture. Then we will have a presentation by Heidrun Schogel and Christina Negele from ORTE Architekturnetzwerk from Krems, Austria. And we will have the artist presentation is from Svetlana Reinish from Ukraine, who participated in a project partly subsidized by i-Portunus in 2019. Please feel free to ask for all the participants that are joining us on Zoom, free to ask questions in the Q&A section, and we are also streaming live on Facebook. So for everyone who's watching us on Facebook, also feel free to ask questions in the chat box, and considering the time, we will make sure to answer as many as possible. Without any further ado, I would like to give the word to Alan, who will tell us everything we need to know about the current open call. So Alan, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you, Bojana, for the introduction and for the invitation, and thanks TransArtists and DutchCulture, of course, for setting this up. Today I will work on a more practical level. I have about 20 minutes, and I just wanted to guide you a little bit through the concrete application form, as the deadline for architecture is approaching by the end of this week. So you are able to send in applications until the Sunday at 6. That's the official deadline of the i-Portunus for architecture project. I'll just briefly introduce you, since this is already the third webinar. I think in the meantime, we already gathered quite some information about, of course, what the i-Portunus project is about. Maybe just as a rehearsal, this two major points is that, of course, i-Portunus can be used as an application. Well, you can apply for i-Portunus if you are looking for support for artistic international mobility. So just to give you an idea how to apply, here you can find on the website that I opened and that I share with you, you have the general information that gives kind of an introduction of the i-Portunus program, but maybe more importantly at this point, these are the eligible countries, which we call the Creative Europe countries. So there are 41 countries that are eligible, also still included the United Kingdom. For the moment, this is until the end of this i-Portunus project, as we are still in the second pilot phase. The United Kingdom is still eligible. For the future of i-Portunus, of course, this will be different. So here you can find all the information about the countries that are eligible. So if you have a legal residency in one of these countries and you are interested to travel to one of the other countries within the Creative Europe realm, then you are eligible to apply for this i-Portunus fund. i-Portunus focuses on the support for individuals, being individuals, and also you can apply as a group, but it means that if you send in an application, that you should be sending this, it should be the individual who will actually do the travel, who sends in the application. I mean, this is, so a lot of what I will explain now is based on questions that we get quite often. Specifically for the open call of architecture, of course, there are many applications that are group applications. A lot of times it's also either offices or specific organizations who are interested to apply. So even if you are an organization and you want to apply, you cannot apply within the name of the organization. You have to apply as an individual. So of course, it's possible that you that you are of course eligible, but since this is really a support for individuals, then on the other hand, the second thing that I always mention and is really important is this demand-driven idea behind i-Portunus, which comes down into these main objectives. So instead of really saying like, okay, we want this or that project that you apply with, what you will actually do in the application form is argumenting the objective that you choose. So you choose a main objective for your mobility, being either international collaboration, production-oriented residencies, or professional development. And then based on one of these objectives, you'll argument your own project, and you will explain why you choose this objective and how you will reach that objective. So this is a bit more into this idea of a demand-driven situation. So where you propose to i-Portunus what kind of projects you will need this support for. So that's what we put in here. Very importantly, for the current open call for architecture is that it's open to architects and cultural professionals. So of course, if you are an architect, you are eligible for this open call, but if you are a for example, a sociologist or an engineer that's active within architecture, of course, that's important that you have an activity within this sector, then you are eligible too. So it's pretty open in that sense, pretty flexible. Because because you also see that not only architects are active within this sector. As I said, individuals and groups up to 5 people. Another important aspect maybe in this perspective is that there is also not really an eligibility towards the commercial character of organizations. I think specifically for architecture, this is important. The i-Portunus programs can be perfectly used in a co-production with other financial incomes. So for example, if you already have a project budget to organize the project, but you are looking for additional support for this travel, this is where i-Portunus comes in. The maximum of the grant, as you can see here, this is the way that the grant is calculated. The maximum amount of a grant per person is 3,000 euros. So it means that i-Portunus partly supports artistic mobility, but in some cases it might not be able to support the whole mobility. So in that sense, i-Portunus is really thought as a kind of application somehow to a co-production is of course definitely possible. How is the calculation happening? So in a minute we will go into the application, so then you can see a little bit how it looks like. But actually you don't have to worry too much about the financial side of things. What we do, and this is again going to this individual support, is we try to keep the application form as simple as possible, as straightforward as possible. In that sense, it is also not asked to provide your own budget. So you don't have to take care of budget. You can mainly focus on how you want to explain the project, and of course identify the mobility and work with your host, etc. Other than that, there is an automatic calculation in the application form that calculates this formula. It exists out of 2 parts. One part, it's a fixed amount. It's a lump sum of 350 euro per person for transport. And then it calculates the per diems. The per diems is a maximum of 2,650 euros per person, and it calculates according to the number of days that you are traveling and also towards the destination. And because here you can see there are several groups, and then it has a difference of the amount of per diem per group. So this is the way that it calculates. So which allows, so if you fill in the application form, and depending on what you fill in the mobility section, it will automatically calculate what you can apply for. As I said, is includes 4 members, then it's of course 3,000 euro times 4 that will be calculated in the automatic calculation. If you click here, if you really want to have all the information. Here is a PDF that you can download. I can briefly click upon it, and here you can find again all the information in pretty much detailed about the entire open call. So this is also an interesting document if you really want to be very much informed. On the website, just briefly, so here you can find some specifics on how to apply, application requirements, etc. Important if you have specific questions is to first check the frequently asked questions. It's pretty detailed. It gives also some ideas about the COVID-19 situation, which of course is an important aspect, eligibility as well. You will find material there about specifically about group applications, also about the application procedure. If it happens that your answer is not in the frequently asked questions, then you can always contact us, which is actually through this info@i-Portunus.eu. I think we might also mention it later on. So this is concerning the website. You will also find other mobility opportunities and more, if you want to go more in depth about mobility itself, also about the operational study that somehow was at the base of done by On the Move, that was at the base of the whole i-Portunus project. If you want to go deeper into that, that's of course possible as well. So this is the homepage. What you would do is you can find all the information here. If if you want to apply, you just click apply now. This is my application, so it's an administrative account. So for you, it will slightly look different. So this will not be here, the call for applications. You will only see the button submit a new application. And here are still some links to the current applications that are open. I'll just open one, and then you get into the my i-Portunus.eu. This is the portal. It's a digital portal, and from that moment, so the moment you decide you want to apply, from that moment you actually everything happens digitally, which is good and very practical. The first thing, you don't immediately see personal details. The first thing you will have to do is choose for which open call you apply. So it will ask like, okay, do you apply for music? Do you apply for architecture? In this case, you have to choose architecture, of course. You fill in your personal details. That's pretty straightforward. Here you can fill in individual or group. If you decide to go for a group application, then you can fill in the additional names here. What is important to think of as a group application, because we get a lot of questions about that as well, is that you can only go for a group application if you all go for the same project. So the destination should be the same for all the members of the group, and ideally also the amount of time should be the same that you will travel. Because it's not possible in the application form to choose for each individual member to give in separate mobility periods, for instance. So you can only add one mobility period, so you can add the several members, but you can only add one mobility period. You can add multiple destinations and things like that, but these should be representative for the entire group. If you go for a group application, it's also important that from then on that you have to look at the application form a little bit differently. That means that all the information that you send in should represent the group and not you as an individual, although the application happens from an individual perspective. So sometimes that might be a bit confusing, but of course, if then you send in a CV, for instance, then it's logic that that CV should represent the group and not you individually, of course. And so that's concerning group applications. Also about, yeah, here you give in your education, the languages, etc. Then here with work experience, yeah, of course, I just said this was an example. This is a test, so don't mind what I put in there. Here, yeah, it will be asked also what your estimated annual income is. Don't worry too much about it. This should not be in very detailed and precise. It's an estimate, and so it's just to know a little bit what the current situation is. Also, current occupation. You can choose between artist, creator, or cultural professional. So also there you can choose yourself, and then you can choose here which way you are employed. This is rather important in that sense, the recent artistic cultural professional achievements. Here you can briefly mention previous projects. Of course, it's interesting that the projects that you mention here, that they relate in some way or another to the current project that you ask support for, because then it gives some additional information. Here we are in the mobility section. Here you can choose, so as I said, you can either choose segmented or or a continuous mobility. What's the difference? If you go for a continuous mobility, you start, you might go to several destinations, for example, 3 or 4, and you come back. So you don't go in and forth. Then if you say like, okay, I will apply for a multiple destination, let's say 3, then here you fill in the destination countries. You see that you have this segment 3 times then. And for the destination country, every time you can choose the country that you will travel to. You can specify the location. You can specify the type of the host organization. You can also, if it's not, this is a list, this list is not including all the host organizations you can imagine, so you can also always click other. Then what we ask is for example, the host organization's name and the website, and then you fill in the arrival dates and the departure dates. Then it automatically calculates the amount of days that you give in there. A couple of things about this. If you fill in this, what is important is, for example, the role of the host, because ideally you do a mobility towards another country. The host could either be a person or an organization. So you can also give in a concrete name of a person. For example, if you are having a collaboration with another architect, let's say, or with an artist or whatsoever, then you can give in his or her name, and then you can provide, of course, a bit of additional information. Importantly is that the host that you give in here, ideally in a best case scenario, this person also gives you an invitation letter or any confirmation that you have been discussing these plans with them in some way or another. Don't worry too much about the detail of this letter or of this invitation. We receive a lot of questions by people asking like, okay, we cannot give in all the details because we are in the COVID situation still, of course, and it's very hard now to give in concrete dates. Don't worry too much about it. If it's a bit more general, it's okay. The most important thing is that there is this letter, because then you have a third party that confirms the plans you initially have, and this is important for the evaluation. And as I said before, it can be either a person or an organization. Important concerning the dates is that you give in the dates that you ask support for. So it could be that your project takes longer time, but the automatic calculation, you really need to only give in the dates that you will actually be supported by the i-Portunus program, because it might happen, for example, that you say like, I want to stay 75 days or something. Then the automatic calculation will say like, no, you cannot do that because you exceeded 3,000 euros and then you cannot proceed with the application. So it's really important that you only give in the period, the amount of time you ask the support for this project. And then also there is some specifics concerning segmented mobility. Then you should give in, so for example, segmented mobility, it means that you would travel to, let's say, France, but then you come back to your residence, and then you go back again, and you do that several times. If you want to do that, you can do that, but then you have to give in the same destination every time. So then it's really the periods that you should, so instead of amount of destination countries, as it says here, in case of a segment mobility, please indicate the amount of travel periods. So then you just have to calculate the amount of times that you want to go in and forth. In the case of segmented mobility, the financing system stays the same. And so it's not that you will then have 3 times 350 euros. The 350 lump sum, it's really something that's a one-off per person. And then, of course, it accumulates according to the amount of per diems. So yeah, this gives then this happens automatically. As I said before, you don't have to worry about that. And then you can, of course, also specify the way that you will travel. Then you have your project. Here, this is an important part because here you, of course, argument and given the information about your actual project, which is important for the evaluation. You have the project description, relevance of the project, organization and preparation. To give you a bit of an idea about how the evaluation happens, so for every application there are 2 evaluators. These 2 evaluators are specialized in the current sector, so in this case that would be architecture. The way that they evaluate is that there are 3 elements. You can also find it on the website. We're pretty transparent about that. One element would be the relevance of the mobility. Another important aspect is actually the preparation. How do you prepare? And the third one is also the outcome, the result. So these are the 3 elements that actually the evaluation of evaluator looks at. So I mean, that's something to keep in the back of your mind when you fill this in. Yeah, and then there is a small survey, but that's just about how the experience was to fill it in, how much time it took. What the last thing, just to stay within the time, what is really important is the documents, because, for example, here you have the required documents. So here you can upload, although it looks like these are attachments, and attachments always have a bit the character that you might not really need them. I would say that it's rather important because, of course, for the evaluator, this gives a little bit the information he or she might need in order to be able to analyze a bit your proposal. So what we ask for is a curriculum vitae. It's just a list of your work experience, the proof of preparation. This is where you can upload your intentions. You can upload invitation letters, confirmations of collaborations. If there is a contract, for instance, you could also upload that. It's really, you should take into account that these documents are actually proofs by a third party that they acknowledge your plan. I mean, that's the most important part of this. If you only have one, it's okay. I mean, it's not that you just have to make sure that you have 5 pages. It's not about that. It's more about providing this proof. There is a declaration on honor. You just download it, sign it, and send it again. It's basically, it says that it acknowledges that you acknowledge once more that you are who you say you are, etc. And then additional documents, it's basically if you want to provide more information about your project specifically, you can add that here. So it's actually in the visual arts, they would say it's a portfolio. With an architecture, I guess it's also a little bit similar. It's also a portfolio. So here you have a space of 10 pages that you can add visual material. You can add also links to websites, to video formats, etc. More in relation to your projects or any other additional information. Sometimes in a group application could be interesting still to focus a little bit more about every member, and then you can also include it there. Once that you filled in all these and uploaded all these documents, then you can send the application file, and then the application is sent, and yeah, and then your work is done. And my presentation is done. I'm just going to see, and of course, I'm very much looking forward to, let me see how I can stop this. Of course, I'm looking forward very much to any questions or things that might come up. Thank you for your attention.
And thank you, Alan, very much for the presentation. I think you already answered some of the questions that I see coming from our participants, but we might repeat them just in case, so that everybody confirmed their knowledge into the application process. One thing I forgot to mention in the introduction, we also have here Mikhailo Gluboki from Izolyatsia, as well as Fanny Roland from Institut Français, who are part of the consortium that is leading i-Portunus, the organizations, I mean, and they are also here to help Alan in answering the questions that you have around the application process for this round of i-Portunus. Now it is my pleasure to invite Heidrun and Christina to tell us a little bit more about ORTE, which is a residency in Austria, and their focus is on architecture. So I know for many of you who've been looking through the TransArtists database, that's you saw residencies that can accommodate architects, but there are not so many residencies that are strictly and only for architecture, and this is one of them. So I'm really curious to hear about their program and about the artists they hosted, which I'm sure that you are as well. So please.
So, hello from Krems in Austria. Thank you for inviting us, Bojana, and also thanks to TransArtists and DutchCulture. Yeah, we want to present our artist in residence program, but I think there is some back noise, right? Yeah.
Versuch dein Mikro ein bisschen leiser zu machen.
We do hear a little bit of an echo, but I don't think it's so disturbing, or maybe.
It's okay?
I think yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So in 2000, ORTE, the Lower Austrian Artist in Residence program, has been established in Krems.
I'm sorry, Christina. Maybe what we can try is, because I know you are on two computers, that maybe you can mute completely the sound from your computers. Maybe we can give it a try like that.
Okay, is it better? Yeah.
Yes, it is better.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. So in 2000, ORTE, the Lower Austrian Artist in Residence program, has been established in Krems as an international and multidisciplinary program in the fields of visual arts, architecture, music, and literature. We are situated in the beautiful city of Krems, 1 hour afar from Vienna. We offer a very interesting and ambitious artist in residence program in this small city that has a lively culture, museum, and university scene. So that's our neighborhood with a cartoon museum, the Landesgalerie, a Kunsthalle.
Ich kann alles nicht sehen. Ich sehe es nicht, die Folie.
Do you see my screen?
I don't see the presentation now.
Sorry, but can you see my screen?
No, maybe if you stop and share it again, maybe that can work. Yes, now it's working.
Oh, okay, wonderful. So I start again with this image of Krems. We are in this area of the city, and that's our neighborhood with some museums and cultural institutions. Krems is situated directly at the Danube, surrounded by an outstanding landscape, the neighboring Wachau Valley, and vineyards where high quality wine is produced. There is a lot of interesting regional handcraft to be found in the area, exceptional architecture projects, and outstanding art in public space projects, even in the smallest villages. We, ORTE, the Lower Austrian Architecture Network, have been a partner of ORTE since its foundation. Our first guest came to Krems in 2001, so that's exactly 20 years ago. At that time, there were hardly any comparable fields in the field of architecture, comparable programs in the field of architecture, either in this country or abroad, and it took us some time to develop a process that really worked for us and for the artists. Because architecture is a very broad field and it cannot be held to the same standards that are often applied to other forms of art, because planning and building culture are only related to architecture to a certain degree. Focusing solely on built works of art always seemed problematic to us. After all, Architecture requires more of a financial investment than any other art form, and it is everywhere, surrounding us permanently in our lives. That's something that can't be achieved by, let's say, for example, a play. Architecture has to function, to fit within its context, to be durable, and so much more. Ideally, it's also a thing of beauty. We, for our program, are interested in architects from all over the world who work closely with everyday life and make practice-oriented proposals that offer a close look at the building culture in their country of country of origin, or focus on the building culture here in Lower Austria. This is what inspires us. And at the same time, these architects also show us alternate views of our building culture from an outside perspective. In order to bring these exciting guests to Krems, we extend an international invitation each year. Invariably, we receive 20 to 40 submissions from architects, designers, spatial planners, and landscape architects or landscape designers, as well as artists, photographers, or theorists who address building culture topics through their work. We are less interested in purely experimental approaches that exclude any relevance to Austria. So 3 artists are selected by a jury, who then can stay 1 to 3 months. We provide a studio. Here you see the view from the studio to the city of Krems, and a living space and a stipend of 1,300 euros per month. These are the studios. There is also a common room for the artists they can use in the non-pandemic times. Since interdisciplinarity and an intertwining of discourse are important features of the Artist in Residence program, we also foster the exchange between and among all the artists in residence with regular get-togethers. There are usually 5 artists at the same time from different fields. On top of that, we provide artists with opportunities to network with the Austrian building culture scene and organize trips to art institutions in Lower Austria and Vienna. Compared to other types of artist in residence programs, such as those in the visual arts, literature, etc., our circumstances are particularly challenging. First, ORTE's work is scattered throughout Lower Austria. We don't have our own event or exhibition space where our artists in residence could present their work, but we cooperate with galleries in Lower Austria and sometimes try to find special cooperation partners for depending on the developed projects. Plus, it is often difficult for the planners to come to Krems for several months, as they usually work for a company or run one themselves. And once they are here, they would prefer to plan and build rather than just theorize. So I give over to my colleague Heidrun Schlögl.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you, Bojana, for this invitation. We are really happy to join your panel. So I want to give you some good examples from our past. And yes, we are especially proud to have consistently succeeded in bringing exciting architects and their work to the region of Krems, of Wachau. As mentioned, we also welcome visual artists in their approach is relevant to our program. For example, the German artist Christian Helding, he spent 3 months in Krems in 2018. His work is site-specific, situated at the crossroads of art, architecture, and exhibition. During his time here with us, Christian Helding focused on the Wesley House, a vacant building from 1968 near the center of St. Pölten, which is the capital of Lower Austria and which is only about 3 kilometers away from Krems. Helding created a building study that developed ideas for an expansion that could be constructed temporarily in or on the building. Here you can see the sketches and models he created for this purpose. Having presented these at the artists' gatherings, where they attracted the attention of the Kunstmeile curators. This led to the opportunity for Christian to realize 2 large room-sized installations at the Kunsthalle and the Krems Dominican Church in this upcoming summer. Pardon. In 2010, another striking residency project was brought to Krems by Bertram Weishaar from Germany. He was a student of Lucius Burckhardt, a Swiss sociologist who developed the science of strolling or strolology. Weishaar carried Burckhardt's concept even further, publishing widely on the topic. The method he developed takes one from merely seeing to actually recognizing the word. So during his time here in Krems, he led a provocative walk starting in Stein and ending in the old town of Krems. As an act of performance art, he stuck notes on residential garage doors along the way, which read, "This house soon to be demolished." Of course, people immediately began gathering to discuss the situation with great emotion. Weishaar's primary aim was to demonstrate how rumors spread and what they are capable of achieving. Naturally, we made sure to clear the matter up with all the neighbors right away. During this time at Krems, Weishaar also inspired us to take a closer look at Lucius Burckhardt. So we spent a year holding casual discussions on his most important manifestos and finally came up with the format of Gespräche, which is an amalgam of the German words gehen, so to walk, and sprechen, to speak, a kind of a walk talk. Since 2014, we have been organizing self-guided walks in the spirit of strolology. Another remarkable project was realized by a young Spanish couple, Maya Velez Olavarria and David Serrano Amatrian. In 2013, the 2 architects tackled the Austrian phenomenon of building culture education, something which did not and may still not exist in Spain in quite the same way. They conducted interviews with the most prominent members of the Austrian building culture scene and published a small edition booklet within just a few months. Here you can see the cover of their booklet. They also made 5 short architecture films, including one, as you see here, about the Manurit Monastery and its church and square, and one on the story of the creation of the Kunstmeile Krems, where we are situated. When they returned home, they carried with them a great enthusiasm for what they discovered here. This means that, in a sense, our residency guests are also ambassadors of our program. Katharina Feldhus and Gottfried Schumacher, a couple who came to us from Germany in 2008, were also very interesting guests. They projected portraits onto the outer wall of the historic prison tract crossing from our headquarters, thus staging but not implementing an architectural facade. The piece was called Stellvertreter, which translates as representatives, a reference to the massacre of released political prisoners at the end of the Second World War. During this atrocity, known as the Krems Hare Hunt, the released prisoners were summarily shot when they came across the Gestapo. To make the slide installation, the artists photographed residents of Krems and projected their portraits on the prison wall as representatives of the executed. For this work, which caused a considerable stir, we collaborated with the Literaturhaus Lower Austria and a historian who had studied the National Socialist past of Krems. The Danube University has also been a recurring partner in our Artists in Residence program, with the Postgraduate Educational Institute regularly organizing the Daylight Space Award and International Architecture Prize for the best architectural solutions in the field of optimal daylight integration. This award has been won most often by Japanese architects, whom we invited to participate in the residency, including the couple Fumiaki and Mami Maruoka Nagashima, who realized a light installation titled Light and Atmosphere in the Japanese Way in the building of the Velux company in Wolkersdorf, also in Lower Austria. Here are a few impressions. Last year, our guest was landscape architect Corné Strootman from the Netherlands. We will show his film Painting a Portrait on the French of World Heritage on September 1st at the Kino im Kesselhaus here in Krems. This film is a cinematic exploration of the relationship of the Krems East area and the Wachau World Heritage Site. Additionally, on the last weekend in August, we will also be organizing a strolological Gespräch, a walk talk through Krems Lerchenfeld together with Corné Strootman. We're also pleased to share the trailer for his film with you now, if we have the time. Do we?
I think
so. Then we show the film, please.
I don't know. I don't think we can still.
We cannot see.
No.
No.
Okay.
No, you can't see it?
No.
No, not yet.
I'm pardoned. So, but maybe you can have a look on our website later on. There you can find the trailer, and maybe just I come to the end. So,
or if you,
yeah,
or if you can send us the link, we can put it in the chat for all the attendees, and as well I will send it to my colleague for she can put it on Facebook as well. I think that
okay,
would be
thank
nice.
you. We will do that.
I put it in the chat directly.
In the chat directly.
Great. Thank you so much, Heidrun and Christina. So many interesting.
Maybe I just want to say one last thing, and to give just a small look into the future. Starting in 2022, ORTE is planning a scholarship exchange with Finland. So, which will be a first of our association as an artist in residence partner. Residency programs in architecture are rare throughout the world, and we are particularly pleased about our success here. Soon we will begin sending Austrian planners to Helsinki and welcome Finnish planners to Krems. The Helsinki International Artist Program, similar to the Artist in Residence program in Lower Austria, gives international art professionals, including those from the field of building culture, the opportunity to do creative work, conduct research, and engage in interdisciplinary dialogue. As we look to the future, we would also be very happy to establish a similar exchange with the Netherlands. So thank you very much.
Thank you both again. I think, as I was starting to say, I think it's quite, you show quite an interesting project. So I'm sure, I mean, we are looking forward to hear more, and I'm sure there will be many partners, not only in the Netherlands, but I guess also in other countries who will be inspired by your way of working, but also to eventually partner and do exchange. So thank you for that. Considering the time, I would immediately like to give the word to Svetlana Reinish, who's an artist. I introduced her in the beginning, who participated, who was one of the beneficiaries from the i-Portunus fund in 2019. So Svetlana.
Hi, hello. Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here. I'll share my screen. Yeah, so I'm Svetlana Reinish. I'm a digital artist. I live and work in Ukraine, and I create 3D mapping. I work as a VJ, and I create visuals for theater plays and classical music concerts. In general, all my doesn't work. Sorry. Yeah, so all my work is connected with creating visuals for music, and also I lecture about digital art. So in 2019, I took a grant from i-Portunus that was really helpful, and I went to Barcelona. The project I worked on there was an opera/musical West Side Story. And this event was managed by an organization that is now called Unlock Art. And they focus on projects which are somehow related to Jewish culture. Since West Side Story was written by Leonard Bernstein, who was Jewish, they decided to stage it during the Jewish Literature Festival Sefer in Barcelona. And I created visuals for this play. I've been in Barcelona for 17 days. 2 weeks I spent on work, and then I had three days off, which I spent on exploring the city and just relaxing. So we had an international team there. Me, our conductor, our singer, one of our singers and producer were from Ukraine. And singers were from Puerto Rico, South Africa, and the UK. And our director was from Argentina. Also, we had local orchestra. There were around 30 people there. So me, the director, and 3 singers stayed together in a huge apartment, 5 minutes walk from Sagrada. And every day we had rehearsals in a living room. So sometimes there were just 3 lead singers, conductor and director, but sometimes there was a string octet or a piano player in this living room. So this room was always crowded with people, and also this room was my bedroom. So all the rehearsals were in my bedroom. Yeah, so actually we had a lot of fun together. We spent almost all the time together preparing for the performance, eating, celebrating. I had my birthday during that time. Before this event, I used to travel a lot. I went on tours and music, I attended music and light festivals abroad. So I've already been in many countries and worked with different people, but in Barcelona, it was the first time when I was a part of a team who organizes everything. And I was a team member. That means I needed to solve a lot of technical and artistic problems by myself. And I took part in developing this project. So it was something new for me. And I worried because it was the first time I created visuals for the whole opera, especially in another country where not everyone speaks English. So at the first orchestra rehearsal, we found out that not every musician can understand English, but thanks to the fact that our conductor can speak around 6 languages, they could he could explain musicians what he wants from them. So it was a funny mix of English, Spanish, and a little bit of Italian. Yeah, and you start feeling the difference in cultures when you not just travel, but you work in a foreign country. There was a funny story that we had our dress rehearsal, the final rehearsal before the performance. And the thing was that we had only this one rehearsal for putting everything together. Before that, we didn't see the whole show. And the musicians were a little bit late, so we rehearsal shifted a little bit, and then they had a break scheduled at 5 p.m. So at 5 p.m. they just stopped playing in the middle of the song and went for a break. And I was like, what's going on? We should start the show in 2 hours, and we just need to continue playing. So we didn't know exactly if everything will be okay at the end of the show, because we didn't finish this rehearsal. And at that particular moment, I realized the difference in work ethics between Ukraine and Spain. In Ukraine, we don't sleep, we don't eat, but we finish what we need to be finished before the show. And we feel exhausted and tired after that, and maybe that's why we look grumpy. But maybe people in Barcelona are so smiling and relaxed because they never miss their breaks. I don't know. But anyways, I wasn't used to such approach to work at all. But fortunately, everything went great. The concert hall was full and people were applauding. And we received a lot of great reviews, and people came to us and said, thank you, we love the show. So yeah, we hired 2 cameramen and 1 photographer before the show. And I explained everything to them, what shots I need, what we need, that we need visuals to be seen on video and photos. And they were adorable people, and they were smiling, and they said that they understand the task completely. And then they sent me something like that, and I was like, what? Everything looked so bad, and photos were dark and blurry, and so the photographer wasn't able to catch the right moment to take a photo. And the video wasn't good as well. So when I was sending a report made of those bad-looking materials to i-Portunus, I thought, okay, it was the first and the last time I received a grant from them. So your event report is very important because you have around 300 people on your show offline, but then you share pictures and videos on social media, and much more people can see them. So I recommend always think about how to take good photos and video when you organize an event. And of course, it's difficult to predict the results when you work with people for the first time in a foreign country. Yeah, so but this trip to Barcelona gave me a lot. First of all, I've got a great experience of working on a project where so many people were involved. Secondly, I saw all the main Gaudi buildings. It was so impressive, and after 2 weeks of hard work, seeing this beauty renewed my energy completely. And finally, I've got a good friend on this project. It's our lead singer, Anna, and we continue working together, and we have already done a few more projects together. So after such intense work in Barcelona, we both know that we can rely on each other. And also after this trip, I received an invitation to create visuals for a brand new opera called Lis Makita here in Ukraine, in a real opera house in Lviv. Don't hesitate applying to different programs, grants, residencies, because it can bring a lot of new impressions and experience in your life. And I know that very often it takes a lot of time to fill in all the application forms, but just spend your time on that, and I'm sure you won't regret. I will show a video, short video from our performance. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Svetlana, for sharing with us this amazing project that you worked on, but also the experience with working abroad and everything that you encountered while doing that. So thank you for that. And I think now we came to the time of Q&A. We have quite some questions on Zoom, but as well on Facebook, because you could also ask your questions there. So I will start with the first question. I think this is addressed to Alan. Could you please repeat the 3 elements for the evaluation that the evaluators are looking at?
Yeah, it's also on the website. You can read it under selection procedure, if I'm not mistaken. So there you can find all the information, but that's basically the relevance of the mobility, the preparation of the mobility, and then also the outcome. So these are actually the 3 elements that will be looked at. But let me just go to the website myself. So selection criteria: relevance, extent to which the mobility will assist you in achieving the outcomes; preparation, extent to which the project and mobility have been well prepared; and then the outcomes, what you aim to achieve as a result of your mobility. So those are the 3 elements.
Thank you. Do you have an exact criteria for the invitation letter and for the host organization documents, or is it a simple formal letter?
Yeah, so it's not that we have a clear format. The thing that will not be accepted is just kind of informal emails or things like that. Of course, that's not enough. But any other confirmation can work, of course. So as I said before, the main thing is that you have a third party outside of yourself, or like that kind of acknowledges your proposal and acknowledges your plans. So that's kind of the main idea behind it.
The next question, it's actually 3 questions, but I think they're all quite separate. So I'll go with the first one. Does a lecture or a workshop delivered by an applicant in the host country qualify as a professional development, or is it a cooperation project?
No, I guess that a lecture that you organize yourself, that would be maybe more an international collaboration, because if you professional development, it's more if you would follow a workshop or if you would exchange knowledge or things like that. Just on a side note, for professional development, you have to make sure that what you propose there, that this is not part of regular educational programs, because then of course you have other financial resources perhaps, and in this case for i-Portunus it should be really projects that are outside of regular educational forms.
If an applicant has already been financed in the frames of Creative Europe to produce a project and now intends to travel to Germany to share the results of this project organized by a partner organization, is this person eligible to apply to i-Portunus travel grant, considering they were the project was financed by European Commission, by the Creative Europe program?
That's a hard one, because then you should maybe have to go more into detail. But for the normally seen, of course, if there was already, well, no, normally seen, I would say it's not really a problem if you have been supported by Creative Europe before, and this is another project, and you apply for this one, then it's not a problem. If there is a host organization that, for example, with another project is involved in the Creative Europe program, then that's not a problem either. Of course, if the actual project that you apply for already is supported by the Creative Europe program, that would be maybe, I have to have a look at that, because as far as I know, there is not really a problem, but this is something better to send to me in an email that I can have a proper look at. Normally seen, it would not be an issue, but in this specific case, this might be maybe a bit too much.
And another question, so I will read the whole question. For example, if a group of architects from Georgia intends to apply to travel to Berlin, and then one of the group members is a student in Berlin that already has a residency permit for living in Germany while being Georgian citizen. So is she eligible to apply? This person that has the residence permit is eligible to apply as a member of the group, although she is a holder of residency permit for the country that she wants to travel to. So should I, okay, I will try to rephrase the question. So for example, if Georgian citizen, the person is Georgian citizen living in Berlin with a residence permit. So she is also a member of a group who wants to apply for a project to travel to Berlin. And currently she's not staying in Berlin. So can she be part of the group application to travel to Berlin?
But I think I have the question here before me. Then the residency permit, it's because she's a student. Yeah, I think this is also really a very specific question. I mean, you have to keep in mind, if you do a group application, that all of the group members should travel to the same destination. What i-Portunus does not support is that the destination is in the country of origin. So, well, not country of origin doesn't really matter. It's more the country of legal residency. So if you are legally residing in Georgia and you're traveling to Berlin, it's not a problem. But if you are legally residing in Berlin and you travel to Berlin, of course, then you are not eligible in that sense. In this case, if it's about a temporary residency permit because you are a student, in that sense, I guess it's not a legal residency, and your legal residency would still be in Georgia. Theoretically or administratively, you would be eligible. And so if you are legally based in Georgia and you would travel to Berlin, but also in that, of course, it depends also on the project, because if she is a student and the project you deal with has to do with the framework of a master's degree, for instance, then also you would not be eligible. You see what I mean?
I will read one question from Facebook, but before that, I wanted to share compliments to Svetlana from one of our viewers on Facebook, who says that it looks like she did a great job and that this person lives in Barcelona and totally understands everything that Svetlana said. So now we'll skip to the question. Is it possible for one person to be part of two different groups applying with two different projects?
Yes, administratively it's eligible. Of course, you have to understand it's still a pilot project with limited resources. So the chance that both projects would be successful is, of course, a bit limited. But administratively you can. So it's open to send more than one. For example, specifically for the open call of music, it happens that people play in several groups or have one solo project and then one group project or something like that. So
what if the process of collaboration with the hosting organization is still negotiated and it's not confirmed until the deadline for the application, which in this case is 14 March?
What you could ask, so I mean, you have different levels, of course, of how the host is involved. So you can explain your project and provide us with the details of how the host can be involved in the best way. But I think what you could try to do is to send with your dossier a letter of intention, an intention of collaboration, which is not, I mean, it's of course in the details, but then it could be a letter that basically describes the intention of the host organization to work with this project and that it does not provide the details yet. Because of course, after the deadline, there is no possibility anymore to still add to the dossier. Yeah? So unfortunately, it's you need to send in everything. But I would definitely make sure that if you are already talking to a host organization, try to make sure that something is in there. Like even if it's only an intention of a collaboration and it does not have the full details, even then it's better to send something.
Thank you. I just saw an interesting question and I lost it, but it's, can you define what is emerging and what is established architect?
First of all, it's a question like some other questions. I think it's a question that you primarily define yourself. It's not that there are, that we say, like, for example, if you have 10 years of activity, you are not an emerging artist anymore, but then you are an established artist. If I'm not mistaken, in the application form, there are some outlines in the case of, actually, I can just have a look at it, because there it's, I think there it defines it a little bit. So in the application form, in emerging means in the early stages of creative development and of a professional career, and ready for this project and the financial responsibility that goes along with it. So those are 2 points to define emerging. And then established, it's already with an extensive history of activities, with previous collaborations with international partners, and that you already had some kind of media coverage. So this is really an indication. But you're free to, I mean, I think this gives an indication, gives a bit of an idea. So for example, if you would already have a very full CV and you find yourself within the parameters that are set there, then you could say established. But it's not that we, this will not be evaluated. It's more a matter of how you consider yourself. It does not really have an effect on the evaluation.
The following question goes in the same line a little bit. Should the recent cultural achievement be a description for the person applying or for the whole group?
If it's a group application, it's for the whole group. So if it's a group application, you have to make sure that the application form that you sent in, that it really represents the entire group.
And then for the objective of professional development, can documentation projects campaigns be considered as a capacity building, or should it be paired with additional activities?
I didn't get that question, sorry, because it was a bit of a...
So for the objective of the application of professional development, so can they use documentation and campaigns be used as part of capacity building, or should it be paired with additional activity? So if they are creating a campaign, is the campaign enough in itself to be considered as a professional development, or does it need to involve additional activities?
That is a little bit a question that goes into the evaluation, I would say. So in that sense, it's very hard from an administrative perspective to say anything on that, on how, because yeah, that really depends also on the evaluator and how they will evaluate that. Yeah, I cannot really say what you should add or not. I think you can only best argument in the best way possible your project, but about the content, it's hard to say now what you should put in there.
If you can explain a bit better the points, you will be responsible for paying all taxes due on the mobility support you receive. The attendee understands that the financing is actually a reimbursement of expenses and may be exempt from taxation in that sense.
Yeah, in some countries that might be the case, in others that might not be. So that's why we put that in, because we cannot foresee any complications there, and just to make sure that this includes any VAT if it would be yeah, if it would be like that. I mean, because not in all countries you have the same rules. So in that sense, you should always take into account that the amount that is calculated, it's the brutto, let's say, it's not the actual. So it's not that any. So as when the the calculation is made, that's the final budget. It's not that anything can be added to that budget.
Which also brings me to one question from Facebook, is whether they need to collect all the invoices regarding meals and stay as well for declaration.
Yeah, not for the entire budget. So these are lump sums. So in the end, it's not that we ask for every euro to send a proof, but you should prove the mobility. So in that sense, in the activity report, it's actually one chapter that we didn't really go into now. But the activity report exists out of one part where you provide documents that proves your mobility, so which would be flight tickets, indeed accommodation, things like that. And then, but there the focus lies on the amount of time that you spent there and on the actual mobility that you proved that you were there. And then there will be one narrative part, and then there is one part that is more focusing on the communication around the project and the outcomes. So this is how the activity report will look like.
Another question talking about the application and the amount of support is that this person could not find the answer for this question in FAQ. The question is whether the estimated annual income is a total for the group or an average per member of the group.
Well, also ideally you represent the group, but as I said before, this is also an indication. So you should not spend too much time in really calculating the income of the group. It's also, yeah, so if, for example, in music, this could play a role in architecture actually as well. Like if you are an office, for instance, and you did several projects together before, then it's just to give a kind of insight in, yeah, if you would have what the annual income would be. But also please don't be too detailed, because in the end it's yeah, it's really to give an indication. It's not bookkeeping or anything.
And one more thing about the budget. In case the mobility is longer, one should request funding for the number of days just until they reach the 3,000 euros limit, including transport.
Yes. So yeah, this is the thing that we are still, as I said before, we are still in a pilot phase, which basically means that yeah, how the future of i-Portunus will look like is that it will be implemented in the Creative Europe program for a longer duration, and then it will also be in other budget. But at this point, the project ends end of the year, beginning of January, basically, and then that's why, yeah, there is this maximum of 3,000 euro per person. And since it's an automatic calculation, you have to only include the period that you ask the support for. So even if it's a project that's longer, don't worry about that. Eligible, it's not a problem, but then you cannot give the entire data of the, well, you cannot give in the entire period of the project, because then the automatic calculation will say that you exceeded the budget and you will not be able to apply.
And I think there's been a need for a bit more clarification about the residence permits. So the question is if legal residence only counts for permanent residence permits, so it's not possible to apply with a residence permit as a student. I guess we can reflect this if somebody is coming from non-European country and has as a student and has a residence permit in a country that is part of the Creative Europe, will they be eligible to apply or not? Because anyway, students are generally not eligible.
Yes, so the thing is, no, students are eligible, and so the current i-Portunus, it allows any educational degree or whatsoever. You have to be over 18. That's one thing, but other than that, so if you would be part of a master's degree, but indeed the legal residency, I can go deeper into that, but then you should send me maybe a more detailed email. Normally seen a legal residency, it's really where you have your official address, and if you have your official address in, so yeah, it is really an address that is more than, for example, if you are on Erasmus and you are a student in another country, then that would not be really an official address. The official address would be the legal residency, would be the, yeah, where you are legally inscribed as a citizen. This is how, well, just to explain it a bit more clearly. Other than that, it is, you are eligible, for example, if you are American and you have a legal residency in Paris, let's say, then you would be eligible for this call. So it is possible. But as a student, yeah, it depends. But then, yeah, because there it would always be more temporary. So a temporary legal residency, it's, yeah, that would not be eligible.
Can the project start before the group is traveling and working on site?
Can the project start when the group is?
Before they go on the spot where they want to travel and work there.
Yes, yeah, I don't, it's not a... one thing that is really important about the i-Portunus program is that the evaluation is not the entire project, but it's actually the mobility part of a project. So therefore, it's also possible if it's a longer-term project, then you would only apply for that separate element, then of course that would be eligible as well.
One practical question about the portfolio. It is mentioned that it should be 10 pages. So is this number including a cover page, or can it be considered as cover page plus 10 pages of portfolio?
I think so, yeah. I don't think it's a problem. So it's more about the size that you can upload. So you should, I think there's also maximum included there. So I think that's more important, that the system allows you to upload it. Other than that, I think that's okay. If it's 10 pages or 10 pages and a cover page, that won't be a problem.
I think this is also a bit specific question, but I can imagine that it relates to other groups as well. My colleague lives in Greece and is planning to come to the Netherlands for a project they are working on. It is a collaboration with two organizations, of which one is the host organization, but she works for both. And she will be applying from the other organization. So is that a problem?
No, I don't think so. No, it's not a problem. Well, if the question is that if it's a problem if you, well, there are two things. One thing is that the current open call for architecture is open to architects and cultural professionals. So if you would, for example, work for an organization, then you are also eligible for this open call. So that's not a problem. Of course, if you are working for an organization and you apply for funding to go to that, for funding to travel to that organization, of course, that's a bit strange, perhaps. I mean, that would be a bit, if that would be the case, of course, then yeah, you can, that would not really be very logical. Of course, if it's a project and you are if it's a project and you are a cultural professional that is working for an organization, and then you ask for mobility within the framework of a project that's organized by this organization, that's not a problem. You see what I mean? Yeah. But it also, yeah, I think that one is also really, then we have to go into the details, because it really depends. Yeah, I mean, the i-Portunus fund, it's really about international mobility, artistic mobility. So of course, if you would use the funds in order to travel to the place where you actually work, yeah, that might not be very logical, perhaps.
And I think we kind of answered this question, but just to make it clear, we are situated in Germany and France, and the project takes place in Berlin. Can we apply as a group if we are not in the same country and one person is already in Germany?
Yes, so I mean, the group application is eligible, but then of course you cannot include the member that is traveling within his own country. So unfortunately, the i-Portunus fund only allows mobility if you cross a border. For example, if you are living in Frankfurt and you want to travel to Berlin, unfortunately, then you are not eligible. As a group, you can still do the group application, but then you should not include that specific member and only include the members who will do the actual travel and travel to the same destination and the same amount of days.
The next question I would like to read, but maybe you can also look at the Q&A. It's the first question, and I will read it, but I think it's also good if you have it in front of you. And it's the question, will it be a problem if a member of the group willing to apply is also the architect of the project, meaning signing the bureaucratic documents and the city hall applications, but also has an NGO initiated for the scope of publicizing and opening a bank account to receive the future funding and crowdfunding related to the project, and they are registered in the countries that they are applying?
Well, there again, I mean, the question here is, how does the mobility look like? Of course, if you have, it's a bit of a strange question, to be honest, because if you have, so then you're talking about an organization that, so what it comes down to is that you cannot travel within your own country, and you can also not really travel. So yeah, I mean, other than that, it's possible. Also within the, so if you would, for example, you're an architect and you're based in France and you travel to Italy, then that's eligible. Of course, if you are originally from Italy and you travel to Italy again and your legal residency is still in Italy, then of course that would not be eligible. So there you have to be a bit careful. Other than that, specifically for the open call of architecture, it's not a problem if there is a commercial side to an organization or whatsoever. It's not so there you would be eligible to apply.
For the production-oriented residencies, do you need to be accepted by a residency organization, or it also can be a residence in a city organized by yourself? I'm assuming city in a different country.
No, both. So you can also organize it yourself, but in the case you organize it yourself, you should really, if possible, try to, to have, even if it's a person or wherever you stay to, you should then really argument. It could be that there is a specific reason why you are not working with an organization, but then you should also try to specifically say that and argument that why that's not the case. If you have any other partners involved whatsoever, it's always good to still include a note of intention or something like that, even if that's not a host, but maybe is involved in some other way, then I would also still ask that partner to include this proof in the application. That will always work better, but it's perfectly possible that, as I said before, i-Portunus, it's a demand-driven program. So if there is a necessity to organize it like this, then you're happy to apply.
Thank you, and I believe this will be the last question. Thank you to Mikhailo as well, who is also answering the questions in the meantime, at least on Zoom, but we covered all the questions from Facebook. This is a question about the application. We plan to do mobility in one country, but in multiple cities, and visiting different partners in each city. In the application form, if I specify that we would visit one country, then I can indicate just one host. So is it a solution if I specify, let's say, 5 countries, but then mark the same country in each menu and write different cities and hosts?
In that case, you should maybe in the proof of preparation include the other hosts as well. I think also in the explanation of the project, about the project, you can also indicate that there are more hosts involved and that it includes more cities. If you and then in the mobility, I would stick to the country and I would stick to maybe the main hosts and focus on that. Unless, of course, when it's a segmented mobility, unless when you need to specify the specific periods you travel there, of course, then it might be better to also include it in the mobility part. But as far as I understood now, that won't be the case. So it seems to be one travel. So I think that would be easier than to include in the proof of preparation in the explanation you do.
Just seeing one more question, and this is definitely the last question. I'm part of an organization that's part of this of an international project. Can they apply as an individual or as a group? Should they apply as an individual or a group?
Well, in both cases, this is a bit a specific character of i-Portunus. In any case, you always apply as an individual. And so even if you apply as a group, it's still one individual that, in that moment is a project manager, let's say, and sends in the application. So there is no possibility for the current open calls of i-Portunus to really send in from the perspective of an organization. So of course you're completely free, like if you would, the difference is if you apply as an individual, you apply only you. If you apply as a group, then you can also members that will travel with you. That would be the difference.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Christina, Hajdrung, Svetlana, Mikhailo, Fanny, again for the interesting webinar and for covering all the details and answering the questions and inspiring our attendees and our audience on Facebook as well. I'm really happy that we managed to organize this again, and I'm looking forward to the next webinar, which is scheduled for 6th of April, and the focus is on cultural heritage. I won't go much into details because please do join us or spread the word in your network for people who you know are interested to work and are working with cultural heritage. For all our current participants and viewers on Facebook, what else can I say apart of I wish you very successful applications, and I hope this webinar was was helpful to answer some of your questions and confusions. And good luck with everything. Stay healthy, stay safe, and stay inspired. Thank you all again.